All right.
Okay, we've got 4 participants already.
Welcome, welcome, everyone. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank y'all for joining. Just an FYI, we're gonna wait until 1:05 to actually start the presentation. That way we can give folks a chance to go ahead and join and get their computer set up and everything like that.
Alrighty, welcome everyone. Aisa, Anna, Angie, so many people. Aranza, sorry. Ashley Romo, hey. Ashley Jerez, Brian Ramirez, what?
Another Brian.
Fernando, yeah. Fernando Aguilar, welcome. Gabriela Peralta, welcome. Jasmine Arroyo, welcome. Jenny, welcome. Jesus, welcome. Julissa, welcome. And welcome everyone.
I know there's so many names, I keep losing track of where we're at. But yeah, thank y'all so much for joining.
And if you didn't hear, just say we'll start at 1:05. So just chill for now, and then we'll get started soon. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put a quick little announcement. Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put a quick announcement in the chat. We will be
Good idea.
At 1:05.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and start sharing your presentation? And
Sure.
just kind of have it on the first slide.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Cool. 44 attendees already. We had 75 people RSVP for this event, so we're just going to give them some time to go ahead and log on. Just as a reminder, this is the Getting into Graduate School webinar. And yeah, we're your hosts for today. And like Brian said, we're waiting until 1:05 to start. Just a couple more minutes.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
That's a great question. So someone just asked if this is going to be available for playback. So this is probably a good time to let everyone know that this webinar, along with all of our other ones, is going to be recorded and added to our website as a resource, along with an article to summarize everything that Brian will be talking about today. And you can find it at centralvalleyscholars.org pretty soon. So I will go ahead and link that in the chat later on during the presentation. But yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. And so I think we're good to start. So welcome everyone. Thank y'all so much for coming. Let me read this chat. Great. Okay, so thank you all so much for coming to Central Valley Scholars' Getting into Graduate School webinar, being presented by Brian Ramirez, who is here already, pronouns he, him. Can we go to the next slide, Brian? Awesome. So just a little bit about us. Firstly, my name is Katia. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the events coordinator for Central Valley Scholars. For those of you who don't know or aren't as familiar with our services yet, we are a nonprofit made up entirely of Central Valley students that provide mentorships, scholarships, articles, internships, volunteer opportunities, job opportunities, and much, much more for Central Valley community members and beyond. Our webinar series being one of them. And yeah, so those are just some of the things that we do. We are Central Valley based and really working to help our communities. As you can see, our website is on here as well, in case you want to visit it to check out some of our other resources and other work that we're doing. I'll also link it in the chat later on during this presentation so that you can get it easy access. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Brian, who is going to be our host for today, and I'll be taking questions at the end just for the sake of time. So if you want to put them in the Q&A section, we will definitely get to them. All right, go ahead and pass it on to Brian.
So much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Like she said, my name is Brian Ramirez. I'm a first-generation student and equity-focused planning professional from Southeast LA and the Inland Empire. I just recently graduated from Berkeley in May and will be attending UCLA in the fall for my master's in urban and regional planning. So like I said, I recently just applied. I was thankful enough to be offered admissions to 7 out of the 8 prestigious universities I applied to, including UCLA, USC, UNC, NYU, UMichigan, Columbia, and Harvard. But while I went through the process, I learned several tips and tricks that didn't seem fully apparent from the beginning. So that's why we partnered together to create this presentation and share a lot of these tips and tricks that I learned through the process. So thank you very much. Feel free to take out a notepad or to take notes because a lot of these are going to be really important. Thank you. Goals for this presentation. I wrote down 4 primary goals. The first being learning how to choose which graduate programs and schools to apply to. 2 being learn how to get organized before applying to graduate school. And 3, learning the different components of the graduate school process, including networking, the genuine kind, letters of recommendation, statement of purpose, personal statement, the GRE, and the resume cover letter. And lastly, 4, learning how to choose which graduate school / program to attend once you're offered all those beautiful admissions. All right, so let's jump in. So before we move any further, a big question to ask is why graduate school? So I'd like to first start by acknowledging that everyone has a different path and different reasons to go to graduate school. But according to idealist.org, here are 5 good reasons to go to graduate school. Once again, there's several more. But to start off is that a graduate degree is necessary for your desired professional field. So when you're looking at what potential career you'd like to go into, one thing you can do is go to like job openings and check out the required education section. And some of them will tell you that they require a master's or a PhD. So that's the first step to knowing, okay, maybe my career needs a graduate degree. Number 2, a graduate degree may improve your career. So since graduate school is really specialized in a specific field, specific set of skills that you're going to learn, these skills are going to be really helpful in improving the level at which you could be that professional in your career. Number 3, a graduate degree may increase your professional options and prospects. So this kind of goes with the idea of, you know, sometimes if you have that one more degree, you seem like that much more of an attractive applicant for jobs. Number 4, a graduate degree may nurture your intellectual curiosity and spark passion. So this is more looking inward than outward and really looking at what drives you and where do you want to expand your knowledge in. And a graduate school education is a perfect way of really specializing in a specific focus that you're interested in. And lastly, 5, a graduate degree can help you be a thought leader in the social impact field. So kind of going into with number 4, it's you're really specializing on one specific field or one specific fight that you're really passionate about, and getting that extra set of knowledge can make you that much more of a powerful figure inside that field. So yeah, these are 5 reasons, but once again, these aren't the only reasons you should be going to grad school. Beautiful. So which graduate schools and programs do you apply to? Okay, well, we'll start off by mentioning 10 things to consider when choosing the graduate schools you're going to apply to. Number 1, location. Location is really important because think about it. You're going to be at this school, this city, for 1 to 8 years, depending on whether it's a master's or a PhD. So you really have to think about, can I see myself living there in the grad life? Okay. Another thing to mention when it comes to location is that many times, since graduate school is really specialized and focused on the work that you're going to be doing, you also have to consider that the work you're going to be doing and the education you're going to be getting and that specific area is where your network, your professional network, will be growing. So you really do have to consider that. Because yeah, you want to see where you want to be working as a professional in some years. Okay? Campus climate. So what is the campus climate like? What is the kind of vibe that you get from the school? Let me give you an example. So when I was applying for master's in urban and regional planning, it also came down to schools like UCLA and USC, 2 great schools in the LA area. But when I was really looking into the vibes of both schools, USC gave me more of a real estate kind of capitalist type of vibe. And I didn't really appreciate that very much because it's not my stuff. But at UCLA, it had more of this like advocacy, social equity focus that I really did appreciate. So that really made me move more towards UCLA. Degree programs. So when you're looking, at the end of the day, you're looking for a graduate school education. So you have to make sure that the schools you're looking at actually have the program and the degree that you're looking for. For example, I am looking for, or when I was looking for urban and regional planning programs, some schools didn't have that. Some schools, the closest thing they had was an economics degree, which wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I was focused more on an urban and regional planning degree. So I decided not to apply for those and focus solely on urban and regional planning or just planning degrees in general. Next, cost. So at the end of the day, you got to find a way to pay for these different schools, right? And each school has a different price tag. So looking at public schools, which tend to be slightly cheaper, but they're cheaper and offer financial aid, but there's private schools that though they are expensive, they do offer more like scholarship and fellowship funding. So it's also important to take that into consideration. Time. So how long is the degree that you're applying to or that the schools offer? So, if it's a master's degree, it might be 1 or 2. Some PhDs are up to 8 years. So you really have to look at, how long that program is and whether that's something you're interested in. Resources. So beyond the actual education, there's other things you have to consider. Things like research centers, cultural centers, or non-academic resources like gyms. Are you looking for a nice gym? So really looking at that and breaking into that is really, really important. And faculty for graduate degree or for graduate education is really important, and that's because flat out graduate school is really specialized and you're working very closely with faculty. So you have to make sure that you're actually, working alongside faculty whose work is interested or related to yours. And that at the end of the day that you could get along with in regards to relationships with faculty. Because you don't want to go to be in a program with faculty who you don't get along with for like 8 years. So that's really important to consider. Online versus on campus, right? So it's a little different right now, but assuming everything goes well, not this coming academic year, but the following academic year might be in person. But even if they are offered in person, some degrees are offered online. So whether that's something that you're interested in is something you should look into. Ranking. So ranking, I like to think about it as shouldn't be the main driver in your decision process. right? It shouldn't come down to ranking, but a lot of people do hold ranking really highly, which is really unfortunate because a school could be really highly ranked, but could have like a really bad vibe, or it could, be lacking in a lot of different ways. And, at the end of the day, it's what school fits best for you, regardless of ranking. And lastly, accreditation. So if you're looking for a career that, emphasizes that graduate degree, many times these graduate degrees are accredited, which means that they have the stamp of approval from that field. So if you go to a school that doesn't have an accredited program, then at the end of the day, it's going to be as if you didn't get that graduate degree at all, because it's not accredited and you may not be able to practice in that field. So that was a lot. So those are 10 things to consider. So once you looked at all the programs and schools you're looking for, or you're looking at, and you did the whole considering the 10 things, then choose 8 to 10 programs. 8 to 10. I know it seems like a large number, but choose 8 to 10 and rank them accordingly. Okay, it's going to be really important that we choose a large number, because even if we do choose a large number right now, we might cut them down once we do even further research and see, hey, I don't like this school, I don't like that school. I started off with 10 and knocked out the University of Washington and UCI, both great schools, but I realized from further research that those schools weren't for me. So let's move forward. Here's the timeline for the graduate school application process. So starting right now in July, you're going to be grinding from July all the way to January, which is when applications are at the most, at the latest due. Okay, so that's like the broad scale. When do they open? August to September is the primary time that the applications open. But that doesn't mean we're going to start then. Well, like I said, we're going to start earlier. And yes, that's when the portals will actually be available and where you can actually start submitting documents. December to January is when the applications are actually due. Okay, so December to January is when you have to have all documents, your statements, your scores, your letters of rec, all in by January. And lastly, or second to last, February to April is when decisions are released. It could be really stressful once you submit your applications and now you have to do, that waiting, the few months waiting. But yes, February to April is when the application offers or the decisions are released. And lastly, once you get all those offers of admission, March to May is when the welcome days will happen. It may look a little different given the circumstances of COVID, but regardless, they offer online webcasted orientation days to give you a better look at the school, which are going to be helpful. But I think by then you'll have a general idea, if you follow the steps, of what school best fits what you're looking for. Okay, so next, what are the components of the graduate school application process? I listed 6. So to start off, networking, the genuine kind. So I'll get more into it in a second, but yeah, networking, the genuine kind. Letters of recommendation. Some schools ask for 2, some ask to up to 4. I recommend always go the highest because it'll give you that extra perspective of you when they read your application. So I would rather go higher than lower. Statement of purpose and personal statement. They're both statements written by yourself with the help of others, but that'll give you more of that personal touch beyond the numbers and the grades. The GRE. So the GRE is the standard test that you need to do for graduate school. Some schools won't require it for this coming application cycle, but nonetheless, it's important to talk about it just in case your program actually requires it. And lastly, the resume, cover letter. So we all know, for the most part, what a resume, cover letter is. I don't have a cover letter, that's another thing. But yes, so making sure that you submit a graduate school style resume, because no, it is slightly different than your usual job resume. Okay, and we'll get into that as well. Okay, but before we go any, after that, we need to get organized. So since you're going to be editing, sending in, and submitting several documents, you're going to be doing several editions of your statements and your fellowship applications. we have to be organized, because at the end of the day, the graduate school application process is stressful, but being organized will make it less stressful. Promise. Okay, so how are we gonna get organized? So first, we're gonna create a graduate school application folder in whatever storage system that you use, whether it's your computer or like your actual computer or your Google Drive. You're gonna create a general graduate school application folder. Inside this folder, you're gonna have an overview Excel sheet, and you can see the graphic right there that has all these things listed. So an overview Excel sheet, important. This is where you're gonna have the different schools and programs listed, the 8 to 10, their deadlines, the name of the programs, and the different requirements for each program. So this is important, once again, because you have to keep up to date with when things are due, and the little different things that you have to make sure to get done. So that's going to be your go-to document. Next, a networking Excel sheet. Not to scare you, but we're applying to 8 to 10 schools, and we're going to be contacting about 40 to 50 people at these schools in total. So we're going to be contacting about 5 people per school in the whole networking process. So it's important that we keep those people organized on a document with their contact information, slight notes on what y'all talked about, and yes, similar things like that. So making sure that you keep organized into who you've been contacting. Next, individual program school folders. So you have to have a folder dedicated to UCLA, USC, Harvard, Columbia, because we're going to be creating documents with several different drafts, and we have to make sure those are in their specific places, or else they could easily get lost, and that's going to make the whole process even more stressful. And yeah, so those documents are specific to those schools, so you have to make sure that that's definitely organized. Next folder is letter recommendation. So letter recommendations, for asking for them, can be really, really stressful, but it could actually be a flex if you're really organized and you present all your documents and materials to them in a really nice and organized way. And that's what we're also going to be talking about, to make sure that we allow them to, or we help them make the letter recommendation writing process a lot easier, actually be willing to write you a strong letter recommendation. Lastly, a general application materials folder. Here's where you're going to have the transcript, the resume, and the GRE, which are going to be mostly the same for all the schools. So yes, keep that in mind. Beautiful. Okay, so now let's start off with number 1, networking. Networking the genuine kind. I wrote down the genuine kind because when I arrived at Berkeley and started hearing the word networking, I was kind of thrown off because I heard it in a lot of different kind of ways, more of like self-absorbed ways of, I am this person because of, I know these many people. So it was really superficial, and that's not what I'm trying to talk about. I'm actually talking about creating a team of support, a team of world changers where you could actually rely on these people, and where they could lend you the hand and you could lend your hand to them. So really focusing on creating a network of genuine connections. And at the end of the day, people who you'll be networking throughout the process are going to play a role in the admissions process. So at the end of the day, it's going to be really helpful for getting into graduate school. So who will help you throughout the process? Or better said, who will help you the most? Besides your family and friends, current graduate students will be an incredible part of the process. I met several really amazing individuals at those respective schools that played a great role in me submitting the best application that I could. I wrote down especially those who share similar identities because if people have been in similar shoes as you, they're going to be more willing to help you. For example, I reached out to the Planet's Color for Social Equity at UCLA. Big shout out to them. They were super nice and super kind the whole process. that they literally mentored me. They helped me look over essays. It was just super helpful. So I really recommend that. Prioritizing reaching out to community groups at schools that you're applying to that show or focus on that identity that you hold. Okay, so how many people are going to reach out in terms of current graduate students at each school? We're going to be reaching out to at least 1 to 2 students from each school. So that's already what, 20 people if we're applying to 10 schools. Some schools will make it easier by providing mentorship programs that will actually pair you to current graduate students to make the whole process significantly easier, but not all schools offer that. Okay, so who will actually have a say in the admissions process? Who's going to be looking at your application? Start. Academic faculty. So professors in your field, in your specific concentration, will look at your application. So that's also, besides actually getting to know them and making sure that their research aligns with ours, that's another reason to connect with them, to make a good impression and for them to remember our names when they're looking at our application. Next, admissions staff, admission directors, officers, diversity officers, directors. This is really important because at the end of the day, this is their job. Their job is to recruit amazing individuals like us and to answer all the questions that we may have, or at least general questions about the program and the school. So those people we're definitely going to reach out to. And they, at the end of the day, can sway admissions as well. Next, current graduate students. And yes, some current graduate students get to look at our applications at some schools and some programs. For example, at the UCLA MERP for the Masters in Urban and Regional Planning program, it's a 2 and 2 system. So we have 2 professors looking at your application and 2 current students looking at your application. So if you get to know students and actually get to know them, create a genuine relationship with them, that also boosts your chances of getting into that school because they know that you're down for whatever cause it is, and you're actually interested in attending that university and that program. Actually network. I'd like to acknowledge first that the imposter syndrome is real, right? So a lot of us come from backgrounds where this is 100% new to us, and it's important to acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, I really like going back and realizing, you know, we all come from different backgrounds and different, you know, levels of privilege. So it's the best and the easiest to, like I mentioned earlier, to reach out to people who have been in these positions that we've been. Like, for example, connect with people of similar cultural identities. It could be a big benefit because they were in our shoes a few years ago. So really taking that step, that's more for the student aspect, but for faculty and staff, I think really looking inside and being like, damn, I'm really this smart, or I'm really this passionate about my subject. And at the end of the day, I put passion up here in regards to all qualities that should be valued. So if you're really passionate about a subject, lead with that. Lead with that when you connect with faculty and staff. Say, hey, I'm really passionate about housing justice, and this is why I want to go to graduate school, and list other reasons, of course. But really lead with that. And that could help you overcome part of that imposter syndrome, because you know that out of everyone in that room, you're the most passionate about that justice because maybe you went through similar things. So that could definitely drive towards overcoming that. So with that said, students, what do you ask students? To start off, be genuine in every question you ask all these people, but ask questions like, what is it like to attend this school? Because they're going to give you insight because they actually go to the school in terms of the student position. What is it like to, like I said, what is it like to live in the area? That's some insight that they could give that others can't give you so well. What is some advice, knowledge that you could give me to strengthen my application? Because they have insight from the inside while we're on the outside. So for example, if that program or that is really trying to boost your transportation concentration, right? The transportation concentration. And you're interested in transportation, but you were kind of not thinking about mentioning it too much. If they tell you that, boom, make a large part of your essay about transportation. That'll really strengthen your application because they know that you would be an amazing contribution to that program. So they're incredibly helpful in terms of networking. And at the end of the day, they will look over your statements and provide you with insightful feedback. And be a critical role in all that. Academic faculty. Like I said, professors not only look at your application, but they're the people who you're going to be working with once you're in graduate school. So questions you could ask when you reach out is like, well, not when you reach out, but when you talk to them, oh, hey, like, I'm really interested in your research, or what other research is being done at the program? What skills would and abilities would I gain from the program that will be relevant to my career afterwards? So what institution centers are also available for students? So is there like a specific research center or this that's available for me? And I really emphasize the idea of making a good impression on faculty, once again, because they choose students. So make sure that you present yourself in the best way possible, and I'm sure you will, because it'll be helpful. So next, academic staff. Like I mentioned, this is their job to recruit amazing students like us. So you can ask more of the genuine questions, less focused on like the ins and outs of the program, more of like, hey, most generally, what makes the difference between this program and other programs? Or hey, what funding opportunities are available for low-income POC like myself? Or what other resources are there for people like myself? And once again, make a good impression on everyone, and really express your interest to academic staff. Because when schools send out admission offers, the way it works is that their goal is to send out offers that will be accepted. So they also put a large emphasis on offering admissions to people who are actually going to accept their offers. And if you're that one person that reaches out often, I'm not saying like go overboard, but reach out often and schedule these phone calls. That'll give them a good sign to let them know, hey, this person actually wants to come to our school. So keep that in mind. So really emphasize the fact that you want to go to their school. Forget about the other schools. Say, I really want to go to your school. Even if that's not 100% true, really say that. Okay. Next. So here's an example of the impact of networking. So I reached out through email to Dr. Rowe from UNC. He was an amazing professor to talk to. He does a lot of really important housing work. So this was an example of an email I sent him. So I started off by introducing myself, letting them know I'm a fourth year, really interested in that school, that specific program, and his specific research. So that really draws them in and tells them, hey, I'm interested in the work, because I genuinely was. So also don't be, be honest, So yes, so I told him that, and it's the last sentence of the first paragraph that is one of the most important parts. It reads, would it be possible to schedule a 20 to 30 minute over the phone meeting where we could talk about UNC's Masters in City and Regional Planning program? And I say this is the most important because this will be the gateway to actually talking to him on the phone or talking to them over the phone to make the best impression possible. Because you go from being that one person who sent him an email to that person that made him laugh over the phone or who really showed him your passion over the phone. So that's really important. And at the end, the second paragraph, I just wrote down a little bit about my background. Write a little bit about your professional experience so he could see, or so they can see how great of an individual you are in regards to whatever the profession. Reminding him, because it took like 2 weeks for him to respond, he finally responded, referring me also. So he said that he was down to talk over the phone. He also referred me to a few other professors, which is really good because once I email them, I'll let them know, hey, Dr. Rowe referred me to you. So that's already another connection being built. But yes, we set up a time to talk over the phone. And an example of these emails will be available on the article on the CVS website, okay? So we sent that. We set up a time to talk over the phone. I thanked him, first of all, for letting me, referring me to his colleagues. And this is what happened afterwards. So after having a beautiful conversation where I really emphasized my interest in housing justice, which aligns with his research interests, and just how kind of explaining how I would be a good fit for UNC, I let him know, hey, I believe UNC's program is excellent and I would love to be a part of it. And so that happened, and that's when he responded with, I too enjoyed our conversation and have sent a note to the admissions committee saying that I was impressed by your passion, and with the questions you asked. So this is more of the impression part, right? So this gives a gateway to him playing a role in making sure that you get offered admission. So this is, not only was I able to make a friend with a colleague at UNC, but this also helped my chances of being offered admission to UNC. And at the end of the day, UNC was the first school that offered me admissions, and it felt really good, not only because it was an offer of admissions, but because I knew that they knew who I was, and the qualities beyond scores, beyond grades, they knew who I were, and they chose me. So really take that in consideration, and this just shows the impact of networking. Next, letters of recommendation. So letters of recommendation are really, really important because they offer a different perspective. Outside of your statements, outside of your grades, outside of your GRE scores, they give other set of eyes on you. So you got to choose people who are genuinely interested in writing you a strong letter of recommendation. So who are we asking? We're asking professors / instructors and employers. Some schools request 1 to 2, some ask up to 4 letters of rec, but try your best to choose at least one of each. Okay, so don't have all employers or all professors, have a mix, because it's really important to have that kind of professional experience and that education experience in your application. So I honestly recommend going down the middle and doing 2 and 2 if possible, if they allow 4, but yeah, it will vary by school and stuff like that. So what are you gonna have ready when you ask for that letter of recommendation, that strong letter recommendation? To start off, we're gonna have a summary doc, and we're gonna have all this in a manila folder. If it's physical, if it's online, you're gonna have all these documents on an email. So what are we gonna have? A summary document thanking them for agreeing to write you a letter of recommendation for your graduate school application. And in this document, you're gonna include the list of programs, a description of each program, and a deadline for each program. They're gonna appreciate this because you're making their life easier by letting them know, hey, the first school is due here, the last school is due here. So really making the process easier is gonna help them also be more comfortable, but also kind of be impressed by you. They're gonna be impressed by your diligence and your ability to do this for them, that this will also help them write you a stronger letter recommendation. So after this, you're gonna provide an up-to-date version of your statement of purpose and personal statement. So they may or may not know you. So giving them a statement of purpose and a personal statement will give them that insight to who you are. I recommend also mentioning it in person when you talk with them, whether it's on Zoom or in person, letting them know a little bit about you beyond who you were in their class, but giving them these documents is really helpful to give them that greater insight. So next, a resume. Resume lets them know, hey, I'm a bad B because I've done this. Or even if it's not very long, you give them and you let them know how important each one was. That is really important. Next, essays, assignments, projects you've completed for their class, internship, or job. So if you're going to your professor, let them know, hey, I did amazing in your class. I got an A, or hey, I got a B. And look at this project that I did that you absolutely loved. Remember this when you write my letter of recommendation. So keep that in mind. If, at a job, you did an amazing project, amazing research project, bring that up again and be like, hey, I am amazing. So yes, so keep that in mind and present that to them, okay? And like I mentioned at the end, package this all in a manila folder if it's, physically delivering it to them, but in an email also list them and attach the documents. And how are we going to actually ask them for a letter of recommendation? Go to their office hours. So right now, since we're going to start grinding right now they might have office hours online through Zoom. So schedule time, go up, say, hey, it's really nice to see you. I'm applying to graduate school and I think you'd be an amazing recommender. And here are some documents. And they'll be like, yeah, oh my God, that's awesome. Like, thank you for doing this. But they might hit you with some questions too. So be prepared be prepared to answer the basic questions like, why do you want to go to graduate school? Or why don't you want to take a gap year if you're currently going to be a senior? And if you are out of school already, rekindling that relationship right now, sending a few emails, being like, hey, oh my God, it's so nice to talk to you. Oh yeah, I'm working here, I'm doing this, and I'm looking to apply for graduate school. Can we schedule time to talk? That's gonna be really helpful. Because remember, you wanna connect with people who are genuinely interested in helping you, genuinely interested in being on that support team, that genuine support team. So, and be prepared with that manila folder or that set of documents. Statement of purpose. There's slight differences to the statement of purpose and personal statement. Statement of purpose, the way I like to say is like, it's my place in the field and school. In other words, also the SOP is what are you planning to do within the field of study and school, and the personal statement's more of who are you and where does this all fall into or relate to who you are. Okay, so for the MERP, the program that I decided to go to, this was the statement. It reads, the statement of purpose research statement should concisely address the following in your own words: your personal, educational, and professional background, your motivation to seek a MERP degree in urban planning, and why you wish to study at UCLA, and the specific skills and questions you hope to explore in the program. So please be as specific as possible. Your statement should run to about 1,000 words. So this is what, before anything, you're gonna write different versions of this for each school. So you have to find reasons why you would want to go to each specific school. So you're gonna have to do your research. Okay, so what about those schools, whether it's the professors or the research centers, why that school? So you're gonna have to ask that question. But yes, this relates to how I fit into this grand scale of the school. Of my statement of purpose, it's just the first paragraph, but I highlighted the end of it because this really focuses on the statement of purpose, really embodies the whole reason. So I said, through my personal experience, urban studies, undergraduate education, and professional housing experiences, I've learned that equitable access to housing in neighborhoods is central to uplifting marginalized communities. Then I go into why the MERP program would be instrumental in me achieving that goal. So really making it specific to why. So first of all, what's my goal and why UCLA is a good fit for me achieving that goal. This is my place in the world. Who am I? When I first wrote a statement, before I had other people look at it, I scratched the surface of who I am. And of course, I'm not obligated to sharing my whole story to these application readers, but I missed out on a few of the identities I held. And it wasn't until I talked to one of my good friends at UCLA who said, hey, who are you? And I asked, what are you talking about? They're like, you don't even mention you're Latino. You barely scratch the surface of you being low income. Like, who are you? And that's not something I talked about before. So really put in their face, and not because we're trying to take advantage of our identities, if that's even a thing. I don't believe in that. But it's really just letting them know, hey, I am this person, and this is who you're going to be offering admissions to. And I'm this amazing person, because at the end of the day, if you don't tell them who you are, they're not going to know. They're going to see your grades, which I bet are great, and your scores, which I bet are great, but they're not going to see that extra little bit of you. So honestly, be honest and present yourself and who you really are. This is an example of my personal statement, slightly personal, but I don't mind. But look at the part I highlighted. So despite being a low-income first-generation Mexican-American living in a predominantly low-income community college, I was fortunate enough to have never experienced housing insecurity because both of my parents worked long hours to make ends meet. Good general statement. Then one day during my third year at Berkeley, I received an unexpected phone call from my father explaining that he was in the process of foreclosing on our childhood home. So this is really not only, so I'm pursuing, housing justice at UCLA. So this really adds that personal touch. Not only am I someone who's interested in housing justice, like, yes, housing justice is great, but it's also something that's impacted me and my family. So it gives that personal touch. It's really, really important that you present that. GRE. So we have great news for some people. So many graduate programs have suspended the GRE requirement for their application, which is beautiful. It's a hassle, slight of a hassle, but not all programs have done that. So I recommend y'all do your research and check for your specific program and schools which require the GRE and which ones don't, just to get a better idea of that. But regardless, it's going to be okay because most schools, if not all schools, will consider the fact that GREs are going to be held at home. So they're not going to add that much weight to it, or not as much weight as they have in the past. Okay. And also, talk to current students and see, how much the GRE weighs in their program. You could even ask, admissions staff. And they told me straight up, like, hey, what matters most is your experience and who you are. GRE doesn't matter too much. So really do that research just so you can have a level of expectation of, how much you should stress about it almost. Okay, so what materials are you going to use to study for the GRE? I wrote down 3. The first being study books. Study books like the Princeton Review, or what is it, Capellan, or that one that starts with a K. So buying really helpful. They don't have to be new. I used used ones. I bought some used, and the situation may not allow it, but I would go on dates with my girlfriend to Barnes and Nobles, and I would use their study books. It was easy and it was free. So the situation may not allow it, but if possible, that's another avenue you take. So study books, really important. They have practice tests that you're going to take constantly, and we'll talk about that as well. Vocab study cards. So my vocabulary has never been great, but after using some of the vocab cards, I promise almost like half of the words on the test came from the vocab cards. So that helped my score so much. And they're really cute. They're really convenient. They're like little boxes. I have a picture there that we'll move to a second. But they're really convenient. You could hold 5, every single day while you're like moving around or while you're walking through the house. Look at them and put them down and then look at them again. It's really helpful for your vocabulary. Next, the GRE study course. I can't say too much about it because I didn't do it. And I know they might look differently now that everything's online, but if you have the funds to do it, it might be an avenue that you could do research in. But I wouldn't say that they're absolutely necessary because at the end of the day, there's a large cost attached to them. But yes, that's an option that you could take advantage of if possible. How are we going to study for the GRE? So what does the timeline look like? So if you right now are looking to apply for this coming cycle, you're probably going to take the test in around October, November. But when are we going to start studying? We're going to start studying now. So today's July. So what you're going to do is you're going to be, you're going to buy those cards, you're going to buy those books. And of course, if possible, you could look into that as well. But I honestly recommend doing 1 hour of study per day, doing like 5 words a day, which isn't too much, and just grinding July, August, September, and October every single day. Take practice tests, let's say once every week. So let's say study throughout the whole week and then take the test on like the weekend. That would be really helpful. And I really lagged on the practice test. I thought they were drag, but I mean, at the end of the day, that can help me a lot. So making sure you're taking consistent practice tests throughout every weekend is really helpful. So making sure you do one every weekend is super solid. Aim to take it around October and November, like I said, and make sure that you schedule it for a time that you won't be super stressed. Like you don't want to schedule it around the time of midterms. That's going to be really stressful. It's going to impact your performance on the test. So really be intentional about when to choose that. So when to choose it. I recommend maybe scheduling your test after school starts if you're currently in your undergrad, because you'll have a better idea of the actual, different dates and when exams are due and projects are due, just so you can have that extra insight. And I wrote a pro tip about submitting your scores right after you receive them if you have the money, because delaying can cause issues and jeopardize your offers. I actually submitted my scores for Columbia like 2 weeks after they were due, and everyone received their offer or their, their admissions notifications. I didn't until like a few weeks later, and thankfully I was offered admissions, but I was scared because they told me like, we're not even sure if we're going to be able to offer you admissions anymore because you didn't even give us your scores on time. So that was terrible. So don't let that happen to you. Okay, so these are the GRE materials I mentioned. On the left, you have an example of a study book. So making sure, it doesn't have to be the 2020. You can get, a few years back. They're mostly similar. But on the right are the beautiful vocab cards that I mentioned earlier. And they're perfect. I recommend them. They're going to help your vocab a lot. Beautiful. So resume, the most important thing to take away from the whole resume thing is that they are different from your work resume. Your grad school resume is going to be more focused on the education aspect of your experience. So your GPA, not fully necessary. I don't even think I put mine down, but they recommend it. If you wrote a thesis, mention that. Your academic awards and relevant coursework to whatever program you're applying to. Really important. Editing your resume, you could go to your career centers, you could go to colleagues, even professors maybe, but let them know that it's a graduate school resume because they'll know how to cater it specifically to graduate school. Your application. So if you've done everything, or at least if you set up your organization right, you're not going to be checking for the first time, come January or December. You're going to be keeping track of it. But, starting with that organization, you're going to know when, what you finished, what you haven't finished. So keep that in mind throughout the process. But now that it's time to submit your application, make sure that everything's in or that you have everything ready. Paying application fees. So some schools' applications are not free, and it's super unfortunate. But a little tip that I've done is I reach out to admission offices and say, hey, I'm a low-income student and I can't afford it. Can you please waive it? And even if they don't promote their like waiving of the application fee, they might do it. So please don't be afraid to ask because that could be the difference between you paying, $100 versus $0. Okay, so please keep that in mind. And lastly, submitting your application. So that's an example of the application materials for the program that I applied to for UCLA. But that lists most of the things that we're talking about, if not all of them. I know some are optional, like the work sample. But yes, the actual division online application has like simple questions regarding, who, your name and your address and stuff like that. But everything else is things we've talked about. What do you do after you apply? I'd like to start off by saying, first, relax and breathe, because we just breezed through what, 50 minutes of talking about the process. It's long, it's stressful. We're all probably stressed about this. So taking time to relax and breathe. It's January, you're done. Take a few months to relax and focus on your school, right? Finish strong, focus on, living and really stepping away from the application because that's done. You completed it and you should be really proud of yourself. Do you take after admissions announcements? So this is when you hear back from the schools, you have, some offers, some rejections, but what do? Start off, celebrate every single admission because I want you to flash back. I know once again, 50 minutes, but remember when you had 4 phone calls in 1 week? Or remember when you had to stay in that one time when all your friends went out clubbing or did this? Or remember when, you wrote 10 drafts for that one statement that you couldn't get down? You're done. All that hard work was worth it, and now you have offers. So it's a really good feeling. So definitely celebrate every single accomplishment, no matter the school, no matter the rank, doesn't matter. You should be really proud of yourself. Next, update your recommenders and colleagues. Remember, this wasn't something that you did alone. You did it with the help of current students, admissions, professors, friends, family. So making sure you thank them for your time. I took the liberty of sending a gift card to my recommenders because they put in a lot of effort And I really wanted to thank them for that. So treat them to coffee or a meal if you're at capacity too. I think that would be really nice. Or whoever was really instrumental in the process. Visit schools. So this might look a little different given the circumstances with COVID, but vacation time. So let's say you got offered admission to schools all over the United States. You're traveling, but in case, like for me, the whole COVID thing happened right when I was supposed to visit schools. Didn't happen, but welcome weekends, which you usually visit, are all going to be offered online and webcasted. So even if you're not able to go physically, attend the online ones, have a good time, relax, take advantage of them like pampering you through online and, really trying to convince you to go to their school. So that's, some time to really relax and think about what school you're going to accept. Lastly, assessing your options with financial aid offers in mind. So you've been offered admissions, but which one are you going to go to? And I think a big part of that is financial aid. So like we did earlier, I want you to look at the ones that offered you admissions and re-rank them according to financial aid. If financial aid is like an issue or money is an issue, it was an issue for me. So rank them according to, how much financial aid or their financial aid offer. So that's another way. So we now have them all listed according to their financial aid. But it's important to note that if you get offered a good package from one of the schools, and this goes back to why we chose so many, 8 to 10, because you have greater chances of being offered a great package by one of them. And once you have that great package, you can negotiate your financial aid packages with other schools. Example, UCLA gave me a full ride. I could have, if I really wanted to, gone to Harvard and been, hey, Harvard, UCLA gave me a full ride. Can you give me a full ride? And that's something you could do. And if they're down, which they won't because they're drowning in money, they'll give you that offer. They'll match your offer. They'll even boost your offer. So please keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to negotiate. It's an awkward process, but be straight up. Be like, hey, I need to get the best offer possible. And are you willing to give me that? So keep that in mind. Next, choosing a school. After considering all the things you've talked about, weighed the financial aid, weighed all these different characteristics, and looked at what school you'd be down to visit. What school are you choosing? And by this time, I'm sure you'll already have a great idea what school you would like to go to. And I'd like to congratulate you in advance for choosing and being offered admission to that school. So congrats for that. But I will say that graduate school is a selective process. And unfortunately, we're going to receive rejections from schools that we might have really considered for graduate school. But before we move any further with rejections, I think it's really important to really take some time to first process how you feel, because rejections could hurt. And if something's hurt, you got to heal. So really taking some time to really relax and understanding how you feel, and really understanding that, hey, that, whatever I was offered, whether I was offered or not, is separate from my self-worth and what I can contribute to any school. With that said, also, being rejected can also be a really positive thing, because it could really expand your options the next time you apply. Because after you get rejected once, check in with all your networks. Be like, hey, what do you think was the reason that I wasn't offered admissions? Or, where do you think was my weak spot? And you improve that. And instead of being offered admissions to 2 schools, now you'll get offered to 10 or 12. Take it as a positive thing in a way. It could be difficult, but really trying your best to do that it could be a really amazing thing. For example, and I'll end on a positive note. My friend, one of my close friends, went through the graduate school application process a few years back and wasn't offered admission to any school. He said he felt terrible. It was difficult, but he took that time to really reflect, connect with people who he hadn't connected with before, and people who he was in touch with, and said, hey, check on, they went through their application and they reapplied the next year. They got into school. And that was because they really evaluated where their weak spots were, what they wanted to strengthen. You know, they added a year of an experience more to their application. And overall, it really helped them finally go to the school and program that they wanted to go to at the end. But yes, with that said, I thank you so much for your time. We're going to segue into questions. I'm sorry, I know it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. But yes, thank you so much.
Awesome job, Brian. It was so great listening to you talk. Such great information for all of our participants today. So just because we're already at 2 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A portion. I'm going to read off the questions we have and Brian can answer them. So our first question is, when did you take your GRE? From Inez Garcia.
I took my GRE in November, so this past November. And yeah, just so to give a little insight, I didn't even score that high. I actually scored the average, actually a little bit below my average, or the average of my program. So the GRE score isn't everything, just to really emphasize that.
Another question that was submitted anonymously is, can you clarify what you mean by networking with staff from each school, and how could we go about doing that?
Networking with staff from each school, I'm talking about like directors of admission. Each school for each program have like an officer of admissions. So when you call the admissions office, they have different officers, different kind of advisors for the admissions office. So reaching out to them and scheduling a time to talk to them is really important. So they have their information on their website. So they have whatever name and then like a number and an email. I recommend sending an email. And once again, we'll be sharing kind of like a general template of what you could send them on the article that the Central Valley Scholars will have uploaded on their website sometime next week. So yeah, sending them an email and their information is on their website.
Awesome. So one more question is, do you have any advice for people who are nervous about talking to faculty?
Question. And faculty can be they could be scary to talk to, honestly, because you see them speaking in front of you in class, you know, every single day. But honestly, it goes back, you know, and imposter syndrome could be really difficult because you think that you're at a different level as them, but really thinking about the idea that they were once in your shoes and this is your time to grow, and really emphasizing, hey, I am capable regardless of whatever level they're at and what level I'm at, if there even is levels. But yes, really just being genuine, letting them know, hey, like even letting them know you're nervous yourself, like, hey, I'm nervous about the process. They might be helpful in getting over those nerves. So being honest and genuine, I think, is the best approach that you could take. And even faking confidence. Honestly, I love faking confidence. I mean, it could really strengthen your approach of connecting with professionals and professors.
Another question is it okay to ask a professor that isn't working in the field for the program you're applying to for a letter of recommendation?
Actually, so from what I've talked to in regards to, from talking with admissions people, they prioritize getting letters of recommendation from people who are actually in the field. So if you want to be a city planner, ideally, you know, having a city planner write one, or, you know, people in the general field would be helpful, but it's not required. As long as they're able to speak on your passion and your work ethic and how much you're passionate about this field, that's above all the most important thing.
Another question is, how difficult is it to apply to grad school without taking a gap year?
Good question. So without taking a gap year, you should expect for people to ask you questions like, hey, what experiences have led you to really think about applying without that gap year? Like, what makes you think you're ready? And what I responded, and it was really funny because this one big professor was like, oh my God, like I don't think you're ready. Like you're only like a senior right now. And what I told him, look, from talking with people who are applying to this program, a lot of people are, let's say, in the 30s, 40s. Everyone has their own level or their own like timeline, of course. But the reason I'm applying so early is because I know this is the field that I'm passionate in, and let them know, hey, I've done this experience that's related to this field. And from both experiences, I've learned that this is where I want to contribute and this is where I'm interested. So really emphasizing that is really important. But going back to the question of how hard is it? It's hard because obviously you're managing your undergrad and managing your senior year, but it's doable. Once again, if you stay organized and driven, it's a doable process.
Awesome. We've got a lot of questions. One more is, how much money do you need to save for application fees and GRE exams?
Question. And I'll make sure to also touch on a few of these things on the article. I wasn't able to put everything down, but some applications cost like $70. So that's a price. And timesing it by 10 or 8 or whatever number, it could be a big price. But once again, try to reach out to really reduce that. So that's solely the application. GRE, I believe it costs like $250, but if you reach out to the ETS, I believe, which is the company that I guess manages the GRE, you could ask for a waiver, and I think it's like $100 off, like a reduction in the cost, and that's a big decrease. So I'll definitely add more information on that. Thank you for bringing it up, because yeah, it could be a really costly process, but if you do it, if you know these ins and outs, then you could definitely reduce the price by a lot.
Awesome. Another question is, do you have advice for people who may not have the most work experience, not a lot of internships or jobs?
If you don't have that many internship or job experiences, I would really try to experiences that you do have and really stretching those, or really just showing how important those were to your realization that this is the field you would like to be a part of. Yeah. For example, if you were a volunteer in an area similar to your field, really emphasize that. Get a letter of recommendation from the person who supervised you, and even though it's not like an internship or a job, they could really speak on behalf as to why you would be a good fit for that field. So going back to the question, just really emphasizing the experiences you do have. And if, for example, you do want to, if you don't have that much experience right now, it's still July, applications are due in January. So take the next few months to pick up some type of opportunity, even if it's like volunteered or non-paid internships, even though those suck really bad. And I did that while I was applying. Do it, and it'll be something more that you can put on your application. But yeah, really emphasizing the experiences, because experiences and professional experiences are really important to the application. So really strengthening those would be a good choice.
So one other question someone has is that they said that they didn't do so well in their undergrad and that their GPA was rather low. What are the chances of being accepted into graduate school? And what recommendations do you have to strengthen your application when your GPA and academic track record is not the best?
Question. In regards to applications, it depends the program, honestly, but from what I've heard most generally, that GPA isn't everything. So I wouldn't be super discouraged if you don't have the best GPA, but if you can make up for that with professional experiences or solid letters of rec that can maybe even explain as to why your performance in undergrad wasn't the best, that would be really solid. And if you have something to mention in your statement of purpose or personal statement as to why, that would also really help them, because you'd let them know, hey, yeah, my GPA wasn't so hot, but hey, I'm super passionate about this and I have this professional work or this letter of rec to speak on behalf of that.
Awesome. So one question that will kind of answer a lot of people's questions is in regards to gap years and kind of how to ask for letters of recommendation after, taking like a 4-year break. So what's some advice you have for people who whose professors might have forgotten about them, or for people who maybe didn't engage with them as much as they needed to during undergrad, and things like
that. In regards to people who've taken gap years, which I think it could be a really valuable thing. I definitely don't think that, you know, not taking a gap year is the only way you could do it. Taking a gap year or several gap years would be really helpful. But one thing that you could do to really strengthen those letter recommendations is, well, first of all, since you're doing employers and professors, really keeping up with, you know, your employers. So whoever you're working with right now would be really helpful. So making sure you continue that relationship. But in regards to professors that you may have not talked to in a good minute, honestly, being genuine and reaching out again after several years, being like, hey, you know, sending them a nice little email, letting them know, you know, who you were, or sorry, not who you were, who you are, and, you know, what class you had them for, what things you're a part of in undergrad. And this is a really important part, what you've done since, and what it's taken from, you know, from there to finally realize that you wanted to pursue graduate school. So really strengthening and talking about that in an email and scheduling the time to talk with them once again, so you could really personalize that experience and ask them in a nice way, you know, over the phone or through Zoom, hey, I think you'd be an amazing person to write me a letter of recommendation. Let them know once again who you are, you know, what you embody, would be really helpful. So really rekindling those relationships with those professors who you may have not talked to in a good minute would be really helpful.
Well, so someone asked, can you give a brief breakdown of the GRE, and is it like the SAT where there's a math and English portion?
And yes, it's similar to the SAT. It has its quantitative section, which is like the math section, so it has like stats, geometry, things like that. So that's fun. The English part, which is your usual, here's a passage, here's some questions, here are some words that you need to find, not synonyms to, but similar to those questions, like grammar and stuff like that. And then there's an essay question. There's 2 essay questions. There's essay questions you have to write. When I took it, it was on computer, like at an actual testing center. But if you do take it at home, you're going to take it on your computer. That's just an extra insight. But yeah, it's similar to the SAT.
Awesome. So someone else asked, how did you know you wanted to get a master's and not a PhD instead?
Really good question, and I like that question. I looked at, first of all, what type of profession or what type of position I wanted to get after, you know, my higher education. And I decided that I wanted to be an urban planner for a city. So I checked job descriptions and saw that a master was required or preferred nowadays, and that a PhD wasn't really for that position. And I think the most general advice is that PhDs are more for people who how can I say, that are pursuing education also as a future, whether you want to be a researcher or a lecturer or a professor. I think that's a good idea, or just like a super solid researcher. So that's some general advice, I guess you could say. So PhD is more for research, education. A master's is more kind of professional, kind of just practice. So for actual, just straight up job, I guess you could say. But yeah, so from my own experience, I realized that a master's was what was required for a city planner. So I just decided to do that.
Awesome. Someone asked, is it okay to ask graduate students for
Did you hear the question? Can you repeat that?
Someone asked, is it okay for to ask graduate students for letters of
yeah, for letters of recommendation, you usually ask like professors and employers. Graduate students, since they're usually not much older than you and they're students. Yeah, you definitely have to ask solely professors, employers, not graduate students.
Awesome. So, and someone had asked earlier, do you recommend, if people have taken a gap year or maybe multiple gap years, would you recommend trying to reach back out to previous professors or just sticking with employers and asking them?
That's a good question. I would definitely rekindle those relationships with old professors, because it'll when people when the graduate schools are looking over your application, employers, since that's like the most recent thing you're doing, is going to be really important. But having that academic aspect, because that's something that you're going back to school, so they want to know how you were when you were last at school. So really nurturing those connections is really good. So I would definitely recommend getting at least one professor when you submit your application.
Okay, and then one last question is, someone said that they read on our website that you created a Google Doc to help support first generation students applying to graduate school, and where can they find it?
Thank you for looking into that. I'm trying to think of what's the best way to do that. I don't have a link that I could easily post, but what I'll do is that I will put that link on the document and article that we will have on this Central Valley Scholars website, and I'll make sure to add it on there, and you'll be able to catch it there. It's gonna include most of the information that we talked about today, but just in a nice little document form, which was an inspiration for this presentation. But yes, you'll be able to access it there.
Yeah, so unfortunately we are out of time and we're gonna have to stop the questions there. However, like Brian was mentioning, his article and a summary of this presentation, as well as a recording of this webinar, is going to go up at centralvalleyscholars.org/grad school. So keep an eye out for that. The best way to keep in touch with our organization and with Brian, if you have further questions, is to subscribe to our newsletter and visit our website, and just keep checking up on that page where all of these resources are going to be posted again, as well as, some information about Brian and how maybe you can contact him and work with him in the future. But yes, with that being said, thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate all of your wonderful questions and participation. Yeah, I guess we're going to end it there unless you want to say something else, Brian.
To thank everyone once again for coming, to listening. And yeah, if you have any questions, I don't have my email on there, but I'll make sure to include it on the article. And for those who maybe have a pencil or something to write with on hand, you could contact me. Actually, I'll put it on the article just to make sure, for security reasons, because apparently there's people who we don't want on the webinar, active on the chat. So yes, so we'll do that. But yes, thank you so very much for coming, and we'll have that information available on the website.
Yeah, all right. Thank you all for coming, and look on our website for the following professional webinar series that are coming up. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Oh, okay. I didn't know that it would, let me see. Okay, now I'm gonna end it.